We want to talk about cell phones because a lot of people are wondering what happens when you take out a cell phone and you use it, and if there's some kind of radiation that's involved. And you actually, and you might want to do this yourself. If you go to your iPhone, for example, and you hit settings, and after you go to settings, you essentially can go to the settings in general, and then go all the way down to a little thing that says legal. So you go to settings, then you go to general, and then you go to legal, right? And when you go to legal, it actually, I didn't know this, I just learned this. You can go on your cell phone. I don't know if you can see it. You can see it on your cell phone, and there's a setting right there at the bottom. I don't know if you can see it. See, it says RF exposure. RF exposure. I had no idea. And when you go to your cell phone and you read this, you can find out how they do this test and where you're actually supposed to carry your phone. And they said that you're not supposed to carry your phone so close to your body. Because when they do the test, they do it away from the body. Isn't that fascinating? So we wanted to know more about this, so we decided to look into the study. The United States released the results of the world's largest and most expensive study on the effects of cell phone radiation. Now, it's based on tests on rats, of course, but what they found is clear evidence of cancer. Today, and this is why we wanted to look into this, Food and Drug Administration, which called for the creation of the program in the first place, is now casting doubt on these findings. Here's RT correspondent Dan Cohen with the story.
Back in 1999, the Food and Drug Administration requested that the National Toxicology Program study the effects of cell phone radiation on humans. The FDA's original letter said, quote, "A significant research effort, including well-planned animal experiments, is needed to provide the basis to assess the risk to human health of wireless communication devices." 19 years later, the $25 million program has concluded. The results? Clear evidence of tumors in the hearts of male rats, some evidence of tumors in the brains of male rats, and some evidence of tumors in the adrenal glands of male rats. The FDA released a statement saying it disagrees with the conclusion of clear evidence of cancer in rodents.
They're clearly just ignoring the evidence. I can't believe they're ignorant of the studies that have shown repeatedly in many countries that excessive cell phone use increases the risk of glioblastoma especially, and also schwannomas of the auditory nerve. This is frosting on the cake in terms of that evidence. And I can't understand how any legitimate scientist can ignore that evidence.
The FDA added that conclusions on safety of cell phones on humans can't be drawn because the studies were conducted on rats, just as it had originally called for.
That's absolute nonsense. The way we test for the toxicity of all chemicals is to start with study in rats and mice and animals. Because the genetic composition of rats and mice are almost 100% identical to those of humans, maybe 98%, something like that. But this is how we determine when things cause cancer in humans. And rarely will there be any substance that causes cancer in animals that doesn't also in humans.
Indeed, the same heart and brain cancers that the National Toxicology Program found in rats have also been found in humans.
This result is totally consistent with what we know to occur in humans, and now we have the proof that it also occurs in animals.
But when you add the animal study from the National Toxicology Program, the combined evidence, in my view, is that there is now sufficient evidence that radiofrequency radiation is carcinogenic to humans. That's IR category 1, and you can't ignore that. And the implications of this, we have to be cautious. Radiofrequency radiation is now ubiquitous. We're probably exposed to it in this room, even though we do not want to be.
A major new study out this evening is raising a lot of questions about a link between cell phones and cancer. KPIX5's Andrea Borbra breaks it all down for us.
It's the latest wake-up call about cell phone use, the largest federal study to date of the health risks of cell phone radiation. It found increased incidences of 11 different types of tumors in rodents exposed to levels of cell phone radiation that meet or exceed federal guidelines. Dr. Joel Moskowitz of UC Berkeley says even though they're just mice and rats, it's significant.
They almost always use mice and rats because they predict very well the effects on humans. The two types of tumors that were most commonly seen in the male rats are also the two types of tumors that we're seeing increased incidence in controlled studies of humans.
Something the authors of the study acknowledge, though they do warn the findings should not be directly extrapolated to human cell phone usage. And the American Cancer Society has contended the evidence for an association between cell phone and cancer is weak.
I think they are engaging in problem minimization to some extent.
Meanwhile, wireless safety advocates like Moskowitz take the report as yet another signal not to get too close to your cell phone.
Use speakerphone, text, keep the cell phone away from your head. Don't store the cell phone directly on your body if it's turned on.
He also advises not using your phone when the connection is poor, and don't make calls while driving.
When you're moving about, the cell phone is constantly searching for new cell towers, and so it's putting out more radiation.
It's advice that could make you a less distracted driver as well.
Every death tower out there surpasses bioinitiative safety standards. The question is, do you live in a hot zone? With the GQ EMF 390, you can see the dangers before your very eyes. You'll see who's getting dosed, and you'll be able to discover the hidden dangers lurking in your home. EMF 390 detects electric fields, magnetic fields, and RF radiation. These death towers are not safe, and everybody knows it. For full specs on the EMF 390, visit our product page. The link will be in the description. It's only about $100. It delivers the information you need. You'll never leave home without it. The GQ EMF 390.
Yes, my name's Kevin Modis. I'm the Outreach Director for the California Brain Tumor Association. And I spend my time full-time here in Washington, D.C., educating legislators regarding the health effects, the biological and health effects from wireless radiation. And part of our team is cancer epidemiologists, toxicologists, cellular biologists, all the people that the FCC do not employ. As a matter of fact, the FCC does not even have a health department. And the working around of health effects from wireless technology is really a sad chapter in the history of this country. And frankly, there's no nice way to say this. The wireless industry is lying about health, and they're lying about this technology and how it needs to be implemented. And coming from California, we have more insight because they're already beginning to install, so we know more about it. I think what's important about this Verizon advertisement for 5G is they make it very clear that their technology can travel very easily 3,000 feet. So that's more than half a mile. So what that means is they do not need to locate these transmitters so close to people. They do not need to locate them so close together to each other and not so close to human beings and other living things that will be affected by it. So they're really lying about the implementation of this technology. Councilwoman, if you look at this brochure here, this is from Verizon themselves, and this is regarding their insurance for their wireless devices. And what it says is we do not cover emissions or pollutants emitted by our wireless technology. But what's really interesting about this brochure is they define wireless radiation in all its terms as a pollutant themselves. And they say here, they do not cover and they exclude coverage for pollution, the discharge, dispersal, seepage, migration, or escape of pollutants. Pollutants mean any solid, liquid, gaseous, or thermal irritant or contaminant, including smoke, vapor, soot, fumes, acid, alkalines, chemicals, artificially produced electric fields, magnetic fields, electromagnetic fields, sound waves, microwaves, and all artificially produced ionizing or non-ionizing radiation or waste. So what's interesting is they define wireless radiation as a pollutant when it comes to them covering and protecting themselves in terms of liability. But when they want to force it into our communities and blanket our communities with wireless radiation, supposedly it's safe. And I asked you, Councilwoman, that all of the representatives from the wireless industry, we asked very specifically to state on the record that this wireless technology is safe for the health and safety of our residents. I want that on record because according to their own printed literature, that's not the case. And that's a big issue because working around health effects, known health effects, is really the MO. Whether it's the FCC order, which says that we have streamlining, so we don't want to consider health, environmental issues at all, so they can just work around it. And what really concerns me very much is that what we're not talking about is that we are talking about implementation, and that in the signing of the MLAs, the public was not included. The normal process was not included. Our elected officials were not included. That cannot be the normal due process in this city, but that's what's happening. And if people are really so eager to have this technology and it's so great, why not include the community's input? Why not have their input on what's going on? Now, another lie of the industry, and there's no other way to say it, is that these are going to be small cells and they won't be too bothersome to the community. This is in California. This is what it looks like upside down when they install, and what the plan is to be 4G. This is going to be 4G, and then they're going to put a 5G on top of it, and that's the power source that can be the size of 2 refrigerators, and you can see it's about 15 feet from this woman's home. There is no way this woman doesn't get sick, either short-term with neurological or long-term with cancer.
Where is this picture? Could you?
In Santa Rosa.
Santa Rosa?
Yeah, and it's in you can find it in an article. I can send you the article.
Okay.
So what we have is the industry clearly lying to public representatives, which should outrage you enough that you stop the process and you start over again, because this is a forcing and workaround, and that is the MO. And what you need to understand is no wireless device, and 5G included, is safety tested before it's put on market. No antenna is safety tested before it's put on market. They only have to fall under an exposure guideline that is a thermal guideline only, which means you're only guaranteed not to be heated or burned by your phone or your antenna. Anything below that over time isn't covered, and that's where the real health effects are. The reality is this is the greatest environmental and safety threat of our time, and instead of fighting back and pushing back, especially when we have safe alternatives like wired fiber optic to the home, we are spending millions and billions and just showing the way to the industry of taking advantage of us. This is when we need our representatives to represent. This is when we need our representatives to push back. And it can't just be you, it has to be the entire council. This is truly wrong. You can only microwave radiate people so much. And what you'll see in my packet is a report from the Army on millimeter waves looking at 350 studies showing clear biological effects below thermal, below our safety guidelines. And what's interesting about this report is they said the subjects of these studies, 30 to 80% of them were aware of it because our skin and our eyes are going to absorb a disproportionate amount of this wireless radiation. So you're talking about serious effects to our skin, and our nerves venerate our skin, so you're talking about affecting our entire neurological system and exposing our eyes to military-grade wireless radiation, and our eyes have no natural defense against this. So you're talking about putting this in front of people's homes, forcing it into their rooms. This is absolutely absurd. We have video from the FCC proceedings with one of the 5G engineers saying themselves, look, we are forcing these directed beams into people's windows at levels that we do not allow in our labs, in our safety labs. This is absolutely absurd, and the FCC shrugged it off and said, this isn't an issue we need to be discussing today.
Thank you.
Every death tower out there surpasses bioinitiative safety standards. The question is, do you live in a hot zone? With the GQ EMF 390, you can see the dangers before your very eyes. You'll see who's getting dosed, and you'll be able to discover the hidden dangers lurking in your home. EMF 390 detects electric fields, magnetic fields, and RF radiation. These death towers are not safe, and everybody knows it. For full specs on the EMF 390, visit our product page. The link will be in the description. It's only about $100. It delivers the information you need. You'll never leave home without it.